Midas, king of Phrygia, had made a resolution to have nothing more to do with the gods on Mount Olympus, for his gift of turning everything he touched to gold had caused him a great deal of unhappiness. "From now on," he declared, "I shall live just quietly and happily." It was such a pity that Midas didn't keep to his good resolution, but he was a very foolish and conceited king. He also thought he was a very fine musician, and he would sit on his throne composing tunes on a reed pipe. Sometimes the tunes were sad, sometimes they were gay. "Wonderful!" his servants cried, hurrying back to the kitchens. "Very nice indeed," his wife said, taking her weaving to the far side of the courtyard. "Magnificent!" the guests applauded, hoping that the feast to follow would make up for having to listen to the noise their king was making. One day, the king was walking by the river, composing a new song for his next feast. He hummed the tune first, and was about to play it on his pipes, when he heard it being played very beautifully by someone else. Midas wished it would go on forever, and wondered who could be playing his tune. Farther along the bank he suddenly spied a tall, fair young man. He was sitting on a tree trunk, singing to his lyre. Suddenly he stopped. Go on, Midas cried. "Why?" the young man asked. "Because you play and sing rather well," Midas answered. "Are you a musician yourself, then?" the young man asked. "I am," Midas answered. "Very well, musician," said the young man thoughtfully. "How skilled do you consider I am?" "Oh, you're very good indeed," said Midas. "In fact, I know only one who can play and sing better than you." "And who is that?" the young man asked. Midas thought he ought not to boast, so he replied, "Pan, the god of the shepherds, a great friend of mine." Suddenly the sky darkened, thunder rolled, and lightning flashed across the sky. "You stupid fool," the young man cried. "You dare to stand there and tell me, Apollo, the god of music, that Pan can play better than I?" "Oh, forgive me, O great Apollo," Midas cried, trembling with fright. "I did not know it was you." "You fool! You ass!" Apollo stormed. "You shall wear ass's ears, so that all men may know the king of Phrygia for what he is." Again the lightning flashed and the thunder rolled, and the next moment Apollo and his lyre had disappeared. Then the sky was blue and the sun shone again. Everything was as before. Everything, that is, except King Midas. He now had 2 long, hairy ass's ears. "Whatever shall I do?" he cried, clapping his hands over the ears to hide them. He hurried back to the palace. "What's the matter now?" his wife asked. "I have offended Apollo, the great god," wailed the king. "And just look what he has done to me." "I thought you said you wouldn't have anything more to do with the gods," said his wife. "But I didn't know it was Apollo," Midas replied. "What can I do?" "You had better offer up a prayer to him to tell him you're sorry," said his wife. "Meanwhile, I shall make you a special cap to hide those monstrous ears." For a moment, Midas brightened. Then he shook his head. "You've forgotten about my barber," he said. "He'll see what has happened when he comes to shave me." "Barbers can be sworn to secrecy," replied his wife. Midas nodded his head. "Yes, if he breathes a word, I shall have him killed." From that day on, Midas wore a tight-fitting cap, and no one except the barber knew that underneath it were 2 long, hairy ass's ears. But day after day and night after night, when the barber returned home, he thought of the king's ears and shuddered. "If I keep the secret of the king's ears," he told himself, "I shall surely go mad. But if I don't, then Midas will kill me." At length he had a wonderful idea. Early one morning he took a large spade and hurried to the river bank. There he dug a deep hole. When it was big enough, he flung himself down at the edge and whispered softly, "King Midas has the ears of an ass. King Midas has the ears of an ass." With a sigh of relief, he filled in the hole and returned home, singing joyfully. The days passed. The hot sun came, and the hot, dry south wind blew across the land. It blew through the reeds, so that they swayed and whispered, "King Midas has the ears of an ass." One evening a peasant thought he heard people talking softly, so he stopped to listen. "King Midas has the ears of an ass," whispered the reeds. "Would you believe it?" the peasant cried, and ran home to tell his wife and children, his relations and friends. Then they all hurried down to the river to hear the whispering for themselves. So, in a few days, everyone knew the foolish king's secret, and they all laughed at him behind his back. When at last Apollo thought that Midas had been punished enough, he took away the ass's ears and gave him back his own. Midas had really learned his lesson this time, and as long as he lived, he tried to rule wisely. He certainly had nothing more to do with the gods on Mount Olympus.